Let me describe Emily and Jason to you because I guarantee you know them. In fact, you might see them in the mirror every morning. Emily and Jason are both 32, living in Columbus, Ohio. She's a physical therapist making $78,500 a year. He's an IT project manager pulling in $84,000. Combined household income, $162,500. By every traditional metric, they should be absolutely crushing it financially. They should be maxing their Roth IRAs, paying extra on their mortgage, building that 6-month emergency fund every financial advisor talks about. They should be the poster children for middle-class success. Instead, their checking account hit $74 last Friday. Their credit card balance just crossed $11,300. And when their 3-year-old spiked a fever and needed an urgent care visit plus medication, they had to put $186 on a credit card and then actually argue over whether they could still afford the $42 monthly gymnastics class. This is not a lazy couple. This is not an irresponsible couple. They did everything you were told to do. They both got degrees from respectable state universities. Emily has $47,000 in student loans remaining. Jason has $23,000. They bought a starter home in a good school district because renting is throwing money away. They drive 2 used cars, a 2016 Honda KR-V and a 2015 Toyota Corolla, with no car payments. They have 1 child. Not 3, not 5, 1. And here's the craziest part. Before their son was born, they were saving $1,200 a month. Now, with a higher combined income than they've ever had, they sometimes overdraft. They aren't eating out 5 nights a week. They meal prep. They track expenses in a spreadsheet. They shop at Costco. They chose generic diapers. They literally followed the frugal parenting playbook to the letter. So why does it feel like the moment they had a kid, their money just evaporated? Why does it feel like the system took one look at their new baby and quietly flipped a switch from building wealth to permanent financial treadmill? If you see yourself in Emily and Jason, or you're scared you will, stay with me, because I'm going to show you why having kids in our current system doesn't just make life more expensive. It functions like a hidden government fee on your entire existence. What I call the reproduction tax. My name is Barack, and I spend way too much time thinking about how supposedly normal life choices quietly turn into financial traps for educated, hardworking people who are doing everything right. If you're someone who feels like you're working harder than your parents did but somehow getting further behind, or you're terrified that starting a family will nuke the tiny bit of financial progress you've made, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, we aren't talking about budgeting better or cutting lattes. We're talking about a systemic design flaw that transforms parenthood from a normal life stage into a guaranteed path toward financial precarity. We're talking about why, in the modern economy, having kids practically guarantees financial strain, and how the reproduction tax steals your future without you ever signing a single official form. Here's the thing about the conventional wisdom on kids and money. We've been told for decades that children are expensive, but manageable if you're financially responsible. The script is always the same. Wait until you're financially stable, get your degree, build your career, marry the right person, have a budget, don't have more kids than you can afford. Follow the steps, and you'll be tight. But okay. It sounds logical, right? It fits the story we've all been sold. Work hard, delay gratification, and you get to earn the right to have a family without constant money anxiety. Your parents did it. Your grandparents did it. So clearly, if you're struggling, the problem must be you. Except that's not what happened. Even people doing all of that are drowning. 2 degrees, 2 incomes, 1 or 2 kids, suburbs, not some luxury high-rise, used cars, not Teslas, and still, no savings, rising debt, constant stress about money. The contrarian truth is brutal. In today's system, children don't just add expenses. They trigger a chain reaction of mandatory, non-optional costs, and income hits that compound on each other. It's not just kids are pricey. It's that once you reproduce, the system treats you differently. Pricing changes. Risk tolerance changes. Work flexibility changes. Every lever gets pulled against you at the same time. I call this the reproduction tax. It's not a literal tax line on your pay stub. It's a cluster of systemic penalties that only activate once you have kids, childcare costs that rival mortgage payments, healthcare premiums that double, housing costs that explode because you need good schools, and career flexibility that vanishes because you can't risk losing benefits. This isn't just my theory. The term the two-income trap was coined by Elizabeth Warren. Yes, that Elizabeth Warren, back when she was a Harvard law professor in 2003. She and her co-authors studied middle-class bankruptcy filings over decades. What they found was genuinely shocking. Families with children were filing for bankruptcy at twice the rate of childless families, even when they had higher incomes. Let that sink in. The families weren't making bad decisions. They weren't being financially irresponsible. They were caught in what Warren called a structural trap, where the fixed costs of middle-class family life had risen faster than incomes, leaving no margin for error. That's not personal failure. That's the reproduction tax, a systematic wealth extraction mechanism built into modern American family life. Let me take you back to 1975, because understanding history is crucial to seeing why you feel so broke today. In 1975, the typical middle-class family could survive and often thrive on a single income. According to census data, the median household income was about $11,800, which is roughly $52,000 in today's money. The typical father worked, the typical mother stayed home, and this arrangement provided something we've completely lost: economic flexibility. And here's what most people don't realize. The cost structure was fundamentally different. Housing consumed about 16% of household income, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data from that era. The median home cost approximately 2.8 times the median annual income. A family could buy a home in a decent school district without leveraging themselves to the breaking point. They had the intangible benefit of a full-time domestic manager who could handle childcare, cooking, and household logistics without charging $1,500 per month per child. They had genuine backup plans. If the breadwinner got sick, laid off, or injured, the stay-at-home parent could enter the workforce. If something went wrong, there was usually a grandparent nearby who wasn't still working at age 70 because they couldn't afford retirement. Extended family networks were geographically closer and economically functional. Now fast forward to today. According to current Bureau of Labor Statistics data, median household income has risen to about $75,000. That sounds like massive progress until you look at costs. Housing now consumes 30 to 40% of household income in most metropolitan areas where jobs actually exist. The median home price has risen to 5.6 times median income, double the historical ratio. But look at specific cost explosions. Childcare costs have increased by 214% since 1990 after adjusting for inflation, according to the Department of Labor. In many metro areas, quality childcare for one child costs $15,900 to $25,000 annually. Healthcare premiums for families have tripled since the late 1990s, according to Kaiser Family Foundation data. College costs have increased 180% beyond inflation since 1980. Here's the crucial math. The income increase from $52,000 to $75,000 represents about a 44% real increase over nearly 50 years. But housing, childcare, healthcare, and education, the non-negotiable categories for parents, have all increased between 180% and 400% beyond inflation. Every dollar of income gains was absorbed by cost explosions in the exact categories that parents cannot avoid. Our parents had slack in the system. We've traded that flexibility for fixed payments we can barely afford. Now you might be thinking, okay, but we make good money. We make $162,500 a year. Shouldn't that be enough? Let me walk you through the math using Emily and Jason's real numbers. Let's focus on what happens to that $162,500 in gross income. First, taxes. Between federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, and Medicare, they're looking at an effective tax rate of around 28% at their income level. So that $162,500 immediately becomes about $117,000 in actual take-home pay. But wait, there's more. They're responsible, so they carry health insurance through Emily's employer. A typical family plan premium runs $650 per month out of their paycheck, plus another $2,000 in average out-of-pocket costs for copays, prescriptions, and the random urgent care visits that kids generate. That's $9,800 annually. Your $117,000 is now $107,200. Now housing. They bought a modest 3-bedroom in a decent school district because they don't want their child dodging fights in the hallway. Their mortgage, including property taxes and insurance, runs $2,100 per month. That's $25,200 per year. They're down to $82,000. And we're not done. Childcare is not optional unless someone quits their job. Quality daycare for their 3-year-old runs $1,400 per month in their area, which is actually conservative. That's $16,800 per year. Available money is now $65,200. Student loans. Between them, they're paying $420 per month toward degrees that were supposed to make them financially secure. That's $5,040 annually, down to $60,160. Transportation. They did the right thing and bought used cars, but between insurance, gas, maintenance, and one modest car payment on the newer used vehicle, they're at around $650 per month total. That's $7,800 per year. Now they're at $52,360. Groceries for a family of 3, even being careful, easily hits $800 per month when you include diapers, toddler snacks, and household supplies. That's $9,600 annually. They're at $42,760. Utilities, internet, and phones together eat another $450 per month, which is $5,400 per year. Now they're at $37,360. Basic kid expenses, clothes as he outgrows everything, birthday presents, preschool supplies, the occasional activity or class add up fast. Say $250 per month, which is $3,000 per year. They're now at $34,360. Let's add it up. $162,500 in gross income minus $45,500 in taxes minus $9,800 for health insurance minus $25,200 for housing minus $16,800 for childcare minus $5,400 for student loans minus $7,800 for transportation minus $9,600 for groceries minus $5,400 for utilities minus $3,000 for kid. Expenses equals $34,360 remaining. That's not a typo. A household earning $162,500, putting them in the top 20% of American families, has $34,360 left for everything else. That's $2,863 per month for retirement savings, emergency funds, home repairs, medical emergencies, family visits, and any attempt at enjoying life. Here's the kicker. If Emily and Jason didn't have their childcare cost disappears, their housing cost drops by 30% because they could live in a smaller place in a cheaper area since school districts wouldn't matter, and their food costs drop significantly. Suddenly, that same income leaves them with over $55,000 in discretionary money instead of $34,000. Having a child didn't just cost them $16,800 in daycare. It cost them their entire financial future. They're effectively netting about $8 per hour of actual financial progress after working full-time jobs that require college degrees. That is the reproduction tax made visible. And here's the psychological trap that makes this system so insidious. Because the top-line number sounds impressive, we make $162,500 a year, you feel like you should be fine. You mentally identify with upper middle class stability, not financial fragility. You make decisions based on that big number. The bank pre-approves you for a certain mortgage. The daycare center says this is what everyone pays. HR tells you the family health plan is standard. Every institution looks at your gross income and says, yes, you can afford this, as long as nothing serious ever goes wrong, as long as you both stay employed, as long as nobody gets sick, as long as your car doesn't die, as long as the economy doesn't dip. Those are impossible conditions for an actual human life. This is where the trap snaps shut. You lock into fixed costs based on your gross income and your pre-kid lifestyle. The moment you have children, every safety valve disappears at once. You no longer have the flexibility to move to a cheaper neighborhood because school districts matter now. You can't easily downshift to a lower stress, lower pay job because you need the health insurance and the daycare money. You can't just pick up and leave a toxic workplace because losing one income, even temporarily, is catastrophic. The older middle class had something you don't, a built-in buffer. One adult whose time wasn't fully sold to the market. That person could react to crises, care for sick relatives, provide childcare, or even earn extra income in emergencies. The modern middle class has already burned that advantage just to hit the starting line. Layer on the psychological warfare of modern parenting. The system weaponizes your love for your child. You don't want your kid to be the poor kid in class. You see other parents on social media doing enrichment activities, birthday parties, family vacations. Even if you're rationally skeptical, that scarcity mindset kicks in. You worry that if you don't spend on the right things, quality preschool, organic food, educational toys, you're failing your child. Marketers know this. Schools know this. Healthcare systems know this. They package everything as good parents do X, and because you love your kid, you contort your finances to comply. Smart people fall into this because the trap isn't built around stupidity. It's built around love. When every choice feels like a trade-off between your child's well-being and your bank account, you default to spending, then beat yourself up later about your lack of discipline. The psychological trap is complete. You're financially struggling because you care too much to opt out of the system that's extracting your wealth. So what is the solution? Now you might be thinking, okay, Barack, this all sounds impossible. If the system is this rigged, what am I supposed to do? Just accept being broke forever? That's exactly the trap talking. The system relies on you believing that your current fixed costs are non-negotiable. But here's the mindset shift. You will not out-earn a structurally rigged cost explosion. Your power is not primarily income growth, it's structural simplicity. The alternative approach is what I call the margin-first family model. You design your entire family life around one non-negotiable metric, how much true financial margin you keep after all the mandatory costs, even if that looks below your class on the outside. You start from the bottom up, not the top down. Instead of saying, we make $162,500, what house can we get? You say, we need at least $2,000 per month of real, recurring margin after everything. What house, childcare choice, and lifestyle lets us keep that? Let me make this concrete using Emily and Jason's numbers. Take their current situation where they have $2,863 monthly margin. With the margin first model, they might make 3 strategic sacrifices. First, choose a smaller house or move slightly farther from downtown, dropping their mortgage by $400 per month. Second, one parent adjusts to a 4-day work schedule, cutting daycare needs by 20% and saving $280 monthly. Third, they cap kid activities to 1 per season and choose generic brands religiously, saving another $150 monthly. That's $830 per month in reclaimed margin without changing their income at all. Over a year, that's nearly $10,000 that stays with them instead of being auto-drafted to institutions. This requires real sacrifice. Less impressive zip codes, fewer Instagram-worthy activities, older cars, saying no to things other parents consider normal. But within 3 to 5 years, that extra $10,000 annually wipes out credit card debt, builds a solid emergency fund, and starts meaningful retirement contributions. You're not buying granite countertops or the best school district ranking. You're buying something the modern middle class has lost: flexibility. The ability to say no without your whole life collapsing. Career options. Time to be present with your kids instead of constantly stressed about money. The goal isn't to maximize lifestyle. It's to maximize optionality in a system designed to eliminate your options. I want to leave you with one final thought. This whole conversation about kids and money isn't really about diapers, daycare costs, or even budgeting. It's about freedom. It's about whether you have any control left over your life once you step into parenthood, or whether the system immediately conscripts you into a 20-year wealth extraction program. Our parents and grandparents had something we've quietly lost. They had margin built into their lives. It didn't always look glamorous. Smaller houses, fewer gadgets, one car, no social media to make them feel inadequate. But they had a shock absorber in their lifestyle. They had flexibility to weather storms without losing everything. We flipped that trade completely. We traded flexibility for fixed payments. We traded time for slightly nicer neighborhoods and more credentials. We traded resilience for the appearance of success. And then we acted shocked when the bill came due the moment we had children. But material things aren't the real goal. Nobody looks back at age 80 and says, "I wish I'd had a slightly bigger mortgage payment and a slightly more impressive SUV." They remember whether they were constantly stressed, constantly fighting about money, constantly missing their kids' lives because they were always working to feed a machine that never had enough. You can hustle your way out of many problems, but you cannot hustle your way out of traps you don't know you're in. Now you know. You can see the reproduction tax for what it is, not a personal failure, not a moral judgment about your worthiness as a parent, but a structural mechanism designed to extract wealth from families the moment they decide to have children. That knowledge alone changes your power. You stop asking, "Why am I so bad with money?" and start asking, "Why is this system designed so that responsible, educated, hardworking parents feel broke?" One of those questions leads to shame and self-blame. The other leads to strategy and intentional choices. If this video made you feel less crazy and less alone, if it helped you see that your struggle isn't a personal failing, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. You don't have to be rich to escape the reproduction tax. You just have to refuse to play the game by the system's rules. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.